Hello, Pastor Leo here, continuing our study in the book of John. Today we'll take a look at a passage in John chapter 4. John chapter 4 and verse 23 and following. We have the end of a conversation Jesus had with a woman at the well in Samaria, a Samaritan woman. He spoke with her and had a conversation with her, but the conclusion of the conversation is our focus for today. Let me read to you verses 23 and following. John chapter 4 verse 23 says this, Jesus speaking, "But a time is coming and is now here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. Yes, the Father is looking for such people to worship Him. God is spirit, and those who worship Him must worship Him in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. Whenever He comes, He will explain everything to us." "I am He," Jesus told her, "the very one who is speaking to you." The end of this conversation with the Samaritan woman is very important to us. First, it tells us something that God is looking for. What does God want with us? It says that God is looking for worshipers. It's kind of an old word. What is worship? Worship is an expression of love, devotion, adoration, reverence, and generally it's reserved for deity. It's something that's given exclusively to God. We can worship things less than God, obviously, but the highest expression that we give to God is worship. How we express our love to God. Jesus tells us and told the Samaritan woman that you must worship God in spirit. It says that God is spirit, so it's necessary for us to enter in spiritually to worship Him. We've talked about the rebirth spiritually, and being awakened spiritually. Part of the reason behind that is if we want to have contact with God, who is spirit, we must worship Him, we must access Him in the spirit. So it's essential for us in our act of worship to be spiritual. This is a spiritual act, not necessarily a physical act, even though there are aspects of it which are physical. But we must worship God in spirit. And the other thing Jesus tells us is that we must worship God in truth. The opposite of truth, I suppose, is falsehood or lie. People can fake their love for God. We as people can fake a lot of things. But one of the things that we really cannot fake is the genuineness of our worship. If it's true, it's true. If it's not, well, then it's not acceptable to God. It's not something He receives as someone who is faking their love for Him. God knows our hearts. He understands our hearts, our minds. He knows when we're telling the truth and when we're lying. So Jesus tells us to truly worship God, we must worship Him in spirit and in truth. To be honest about how our love is to God and express that to Him. Finally, he cleared up something for the Samaritan woman and for us, talked about our faith in Jesus, who He is. He gives a very clear statement of who He thought He was. The woman says to him, "Hey, when the Messiah comes, when the Christ comes, He'll explain all of this to us, and we'll be able to understand it." Jesus clearly says to her, "Hey, I'm the guy." He says to her that He is the Christ, He is the Messiah, and that she's speaking to the one who can clarify all these things at that very moment. So one of the things He calls us out in this verse as well, are we worshiping God in spirit and in truth? And is Christ the Messiah? Is He is Jesus the Christ? Is he the one sent by God to explain all these things of God to us? Is he God living among us? I encourage you to increase your faith in him, to believe in Jesus as the Messiah, as the Christ, to listen to his words about what God is looking for, and to actually put into practice worshiping God in spirit and in truth. This should be a daily act. This should be something that happens not just every once in a while or once a week when we go to church or to Mass. We have access to God through the Spirit to worship him in spirit and truth. I pray that it will be a daily act for you and be a part of your daily routine. Worship God truthfully. Thank you for your time. I pray God blesses you richly.